Hello and welcome to the Reservoir Red Dogs podcast. I'm Matt Ford and you're about to hear the mouth of Paul McGregor.
the mouth, the tongue, the teeth. It all comes together as one to form these lovely tones, Matthew.
I did mean to say voice. I've realised people will think I started peddling a particularly pretentious form of comedy. Oh, this is the sound of his mouth. Ugh.
Oh.
I meant to say voice. I said mouth by mistake. I can only apologise.
Well, like I say, it's all part of the same. It's all part of the same mechanism, isn't it?
Well, we are on a run of form at the moment. It almost feels like we are a team. I wonder if we'll ever play five-a-side. Do you think we might do that?
I'm playing tonight for the first
time.
What? Oh, yeah.
Where?
It'll be 8-a-side down at Gresham, opposite the training ground.
Any other ex-pros?
No, there aren't.
What kit do you wear? Is it like a Forest kit?
You really want me to say?
Yeah. It's not Derby, is it?
No, it's Liverpool.
Oh, that's okay.
All right.
People know you're a Liverpool lad.
Yeah, all right, okay.
That's okay.
And my mate does a lot of work for Liverpool, so he always gets me a free shirt every year.
Great.
So I wear it for footy.
That's cool.
Yeah. Although he's put Fabinho on the back. Now, I'm not a Fabinho type player, am I?
Who would you like to be? Salah? Mane. He's
unreal, isn't he?
Well, they're both very talented men. I'd happily have either of their skills. But that's great that you're playing football again.
Oh, I can't wait. I mean, I'm going to come off with extremely sore Achilles and back, etc. But I just once I get on there, I can't ease in. I can't slow down. If I see a run, I've got to do it. If I see I've got to get past, I've got to do it. If there's a tackle, I've got to do it. So my brain can't. My old man brain's not kicked in yet. I'm still.
You can still hear Cluffy in there. Get in there. That's what I pay you
it.
for.
Yeah.
Oh, it's crap. Blondie.
So
well,
I'm looking forward to it.
I do dream that one day we'll do a Reservoir Red Dogs five-a-side and I'll get to play with previous guests. We'll say we'll do it for charity, obviously, but it'll be partly my way of living a fantasy of playing alongside you. Maybe Norm's in goal, Robbo.
Yeah. Oh, imagine.
Come on, mate. And maybe today's guest up front. Now, he is a very requested guest. People always say, got to get Jason Lee on. And that applies to fans, you, listeners of the show, and former teammates of his, other guests. And they were absolutely right, because this is a brilliant chat. Not just about Forest. And every guest obviously brings their own thing to this. Some of them bring basically a collection of outrageous drinking stories that have to be heavily edited before they are played into your delicate ears, dear listener. Others have a kind of almost strategic view of football. And I think it really reflects the fact that Jason is still working in football and still at the PFA. He's still thinking about the issues around football. So this is a really, at times you're like, this should be on Radio 4. This is such a thoughtful analysis of football, what it's like to play it, the pressure on players, the way you deal with that stuff. And that's what's great about the show is you get all these different people bringing all their different personalities, their different stories from their time at Forest, but also their view of the game and the way the game fits into society without sounding too grand about it.
And it also helps. I mean, as far as footballers go, we've been very lucky. We had JJ on last week, who was a phenomenal talker.
Man.
And I think Jay's the same. So extremely eloquent, talks about the game beautifully, with a real knowledge. And just you could listen to him all day, couldn't you?
Yeah, and him, you're right to put those two alongside. They both think about wider society and not just about things like mental health, which are really important, but just wider societal issues and where does football fit into that and what can football do and
how can it be better?
Yeah. So this is great because it's really wide ranging and he's a great talker. And we talk about everything you would expect us to talk about. We begin by talking about not the hair on the top of the head, but the hair on the, face.
Bottom of the head.
Bottom of the head.
The mouth, if you will.
Delighted to be joined by Jason Lee. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good afternoon, man.
How are you, Jay?
I'm good, man. I'm good.
It's good to have you on. your appearance has changed. Paul was just saying this before we came on. You used to have a lot of hair on the top and a bit below, and now there's nothing on top and it's all below.
Here we go. Overcompensating. That's what it is. You know it is. If I could still grow the hair, I would, but I had to give up a few years back.
It really suits you, though. Is that a beard that's come on during lockdown?
I've always had some facial hair. You mess around with it a little bit, don't you? But try and get creative. But yeah, it's definitely a lockdown beard. And the weather's changed, so I might have to take it down a bit. It's getting a bit warmer.
Yeah. Obviously, people listening to this can't see it. I mean, it's majestic. It's so thick and lush.
Oh dear, it's just a beard.
It's really well groomed.
I can see that you've still got those boyish looks. Baldy, not you, Macca, but I don't know. You might struggle to grow a moustache, let alone a beard. But listen, it is what it is.
You know what? That's what it is. I can't grow facial hair at all.
I can see that.
So I'm always in awe of men who can.
Baldy, can you not grow any stubble?
You know what? It's just patchy. It just looks a bit trampy. Yeah. I can't get that sort of thick, lush topiary that Jay's got.
Oh, never mind. Well,
anyway.
If you want. Anyway, moving on.
Exactly. Yeah. It started off with a beard chat. Jason, we usually start with people's first impressions of Forest when they first come to the club. So you were signed from Southend in 1994. Had the club been talking to you for a while before they signed you?
Well, I came in, I arrived in March, so it would have been around deadline time, just to close the season off. And the kind of story was really, I had 3 moves basically I played for 3 clubs in the season. So I started off at Lincoln City and then went to Southend. First game of the season was against Forest, which I missed. I was suspended, having been sent off previously.
That wasn't for an elbow, was it?
I don't know about that. For something. So I've been sent off. So I missed the first game of the season. That was a big game. That was televised. Southend against Forest. Stan missed the game. Strangely enough, Stan missed that game. I was unable to play. Stan didn't play. But, throughout the season, obviously Forest was one of the favourite sides to bounce back up and go straight up. And they started the season quite slow, really. Found it quite difficult to adjust. And hit a sticky patch, I would imagine, when Stan was out of the team. He picked up some injuries. And then we probably got to the new year where, there were some rumours that they needed somebody to come in and maybe fill the boots when Stan was out injured. So it happened quite quickly, I would say, from end of January onwards. Forest, Alan Hill came to watch a few games. Obviously performed well enough. They knew of me when I was at Lincoln. Frank Clark knew of me. That was the history, really, because he was a managing director at Leyton Orient. So obviously I was playing for Charlton at the time, youth team, reserves. And obviously you knew Kevin Campbell and Bart Williams. And so you get a feel of kind of the recruitment process. Frank identified that I'd be able to come in and probably give the team a little bit of impetus. Robert Rosario was still there at the time. I think he was injured and struggling. And if anything, Forest still had that tag of having diminutive strikers, whether it be Gary Ball, just the same sort of strikers over the years, So they needed a little bit more presence, a little bit more physicality to get out of. Which
is that kind of the Nigel Clough, Lee Glover sort of?
Yeah, where I'm going with that. Yeah. They're great little players, technically very proficient, could hold the ball up. But I think you need to change it up, especially when you drop down out of the Premier League or First Division in those days. And to get out of the Championship now, you need to be able to kind of adjust and deal with all sorts throughout the season. So very physical, very demanding league. So Frank identified that he needed somebody else in a similar stature to Stan. Got the move.
Funny you mentioned that game at Southend. I remember it really clearly because it was on telly. Obviously, it was Forest's first game out of the top flight for God knows how long. It's a 1-1 draw. Mark Crosley gets his head caved in and has to have it bandaged up. We go a goal down. Like, I remember the commentator said, "This is like what a terrible start." But it's like, oh, everything's falling apart. It felt so dramatic.
Brilliant. I mean, I remember I was gutted I missed the game, but I knew it was. I mean, it's typical Barry Fry. Didn't do his homework. I got sent off at the back end of the season, and as you do, I didn't tell him. It wasn't my job to tell him that I'd be missing the first game of the new season. But I came in pre-season, I was flying, scored a hat-trick, scored some other goals. He was building me up. Oh, yeah, we're playing Forest, Jason Lee, blah, blah, blah. It's going to be brilliant. Great replacement for Stan. And then I was like, you realise I can't play the first game. And he was like, you are joking me. Do you know what I mean? Typical Barry Fry. So I missed the game. I was watching the game. As you said, it was really nice weather. A lot of build-up, big game, televised game. We went 1-0 up. And you just knew then, really, it was going to be a difficult season for Forest because that season, especially for Southend, we beat every team that was fancied. Whether it be Middlesbrough, Sunderland, Wolves. We was third in the league at one spell going into Christmas. And, the team had to kind of be disbanded both I left. And we had some really good players, whether it be Brett Angel, Ricky Otto, Chris Powell, Tommy Mooney. I could go through a list, really good players that went on to have really good careers.
So when you sign for Forest and they say to you, Stan's injured and that's the reason we're signing you, as a player, how do you feel about that? Because obviously you want to be playing every game and you want the best opportunity to show your talents off. Does it feel a bit strange when a manager signs you and effectively says, you're number 2 to this guy?
I think you understand that, especially... Forest was quite forward-thinking. We generally played with one striker. We kind of had 5 in midfield. The number 10 role wasn't something that people spoke about in those days, but whether it be Lars Bohinian or whoever it may be, we had midfielders in Scott Gemmell, people who could get forward and contribute with goals. So Stan was a bit of an enigma in that he could play that central role and score goals and create for himself. Whereas if I played it, I would play in a different way. I need other players to, provide support, make runs, and get the ball in the box. But it wasn't an easy role to come into. And I think you had to have a little bit of physicality to go and play as a striker, as a lonesome, because you're going to get bashed by 2 centre-halves invariably. And you have to be able to cope with that and look after the ball and bring other people into the team. So when he mentioned that I would be coming in, we did play together, believe it or not. I filled in while Stan was out, and then Stan came back. I must have played 12 to 15 games for the remainder. It was a really compact, congested finish to the season. Stan came in, obviously played alongside me, but I still played the majority of the games. So it doesn't matter what a manager tells you. I had it in my mind that, if I'm in the team, it's going to be hard to take me out of the team. I'm going to compete. I'm not coming there to be an understudy. If you have that mentality, you might as well forget about it. But yeah, you understand that Stan was a phenomenal player, but in my mind, I always wanted to challenge him for that shirt.
So when you first arrive at Forest, who are the people that you make friends with first?
Well, Macca was one of them, believe it or not. I remember some of the young players and really talented young crop. I'll build him up later on, probably as we speak. But there was a group of young players. I was relatively young, only a few years younger than Macca. I had arrived. Des Little was at Swansea, same age as myself. He was playing lower league. I knew of Des. So you look in the change room, and there's these established international players. Some of them are iconic. Stuart Pearce, this, that, and the other. We all knew about Pearcey. But then there was a feeling that there was a new crop of young, hungry players that came in, which would have to take the club forward. You just got over a relegation. Great things, memories, all that, but you needed impetus of young people, whether it be, my crop of players and the younger crop in McGregor, Howe, Vance Warner, Blatherwick. So there was a really good crop of young players who were hungry, who wanted to come in and not just be making up the numbers. So, there's no disrespect to anybody else, that when I went into that change room, I felt that I'd played 100 plus games already. That was important at a young age. When I went to Lincoln from Charlton, which was a Premier League team, that I went and got the games. I got 100 plus games playing.
That's what I feel I missed, Jay. Like players like yourself would come in and And like Bart, I mean, we had Bart on the other day and talking about
Yeah.
there's a split. It wasn't a split in the dressing room. It was great. It was a great dressing room, but all the younger boys, we were all on the left-hand side as you walked in, weren't you? And then all the older boys were on the right-hand side.
Yeah,
so we had our little corner.
Of course.
But like Bart's my age, and I remember looking up to him, thinking, God, he's got so many games under his belt, and you came in and got so many games under your belt, and I think that's something. Me coming through the ranks at Forest, and then, you know, you got Stan in front of you and all that, and you're thinking, yeah, you do have that mentality. It's like, I mean, I've said it before, sat there watching yourself and Kevin Campbell and Stan thinking, I could do better there. I could do better there. I should be on there. You know, you have that mentality, don't you?
You have to. You have to have that mentality.
Of course you do, yeah. But
you couldn't, no.
No, I couldn't. No. It transpired. I couldn't. Yeah, but you've got to have I had the right mentality, just not the ability. But yeah, that was the difference for me. Looking at you boys coming in, and you're like, yeah, 100 games under your belt. That must be massive walking into the room.
Yeah, and I kind of advocate when I speak to a lot of young players now, and obviously you speak to players. Players will generally sit at a club, young players in development football, you know, up until the age of 23. And would only have a handful of games if they're lucky. And some of them would be reluctant to go out on loan as well. So my advice is always go out on loan, go and get those games, because the first thing a manager wants when he's bringing in a player is to know that he's got some experience and he can handle men's football. You know, we all know that young players.
It feels like a failure though, doesn't it? You're like, you know, when you're at a big club and someone says, go to Carlisle for 3 months. You go, what?
So you say that, and I remember having...
I did that, by the way.
Initially.
Yeah,
I did the same. You know, at Charlton, I made my debut in the first division, probably 16 and a half. I hadn't been in an academy as a young player up to the age of 16. I came in raw at the age of 16. But my mentality when I arrived at Charlton was, I can see the first team players over there. I want to get over there. I want to play. Whenever I did get called over to go and join in, I used to leave some on them. It was like the manager would be going, no. People would be like, calm down. I'd be like, no. I want to play in that first team. I will be manhandling people, letting them know that I'm here, because what's the point in being there? So I made my debut at a very young age with I've got his surname, Scott Minto. Me and Scott Minto. And then there was another striker called Gordon Watson, who was my strike partner, who had a professional career, Sheffield Wednesday, this, that, and the other.
Flash.
And we were good young players. Flash Gordon.
No,
Gordon
Flash,
Watson, Gordon Watson was my strike partner. You know, same age. We were smashing it in the South East counties. Then you had Kevin Campbell at Arsenal, killing it. Andy Cole, obviously, was my age as well. You had Alan Shearer at Southampton. So there was good young players in and around. So the point was, I made my debut, and the last thing I wanted was to go back to the youth team. Yeah, I played in the cup games, and I played reserve team football. And in those days, reserve team football was proper football. You know, it wasn't development football. It was against proper senior pros who wasn't playing at the weekend. It
was a league to be won, wasn't it?
It was a proper introduction to men's football against senior professionals. So for me, it was like, okay, I'm not playing first team football. I am getting, kind of exposed to senior football, but I need to go on loan. So I went on loan to Fisher Athletic, and the manager at the time was Malcolm Allison. And a lot of young people wouldn't know about Malcolm Allison, but Malcolm Allison, legend in the game. You know, fedora hat, forget Pharrell Williams and this, that, and the other. He wore the fedora hat. He came down to the training ground. He said, look, I'm manager of Fisher Athletic. I'm thinking, well, what's he doing at Fisher Athletic? That's a conference team in East London. But the experience was beneficial. I went there, had a month, scored goals, played against Barnet a few times, always scored against Barnet, Barry Fry. Really enjoyed men's football. Went back, thought, okay, I'm back in the reserves again. Don't really want to be in the reserves, went on loan to Stockport. So the feeling for me was that I need to play first team football. The quickest way to learn is to play senior football. You can do drills all day. You know, I've coached as well and I've managed. You can do drills all day, they're great. But we know that when, as you mentioned, when you get exposed to first team football, you can just be manhandled and actually old man out of a game. You've got all the technique, all the skill, all the speed, but someone just grabs your shirts, grabs whatever they choose to grab hold of, and they can say, look, not today, son. Yeah. So if you're not used to that, young players, they can actually fall down very quickly before their careers actually take off. Best
thing I ever did, mate, going out, just an experience as well, scoring scoring a goal with a crowd, like a proper crowd, and like understanding that relationship from the pitch to the crowd and going, this is the buzz. This is the thing.
3 points. 3 points is your bread and butter. You know, it's what matters. So, you know, there's lots of players playing development football, and I understand why clubs have got so many players on their books. But back in our day, and probably years before, you didn't get a pro contract unless you was actually deemed as you've got a chance to play in the first team. Whereas, no disrespect to players now, there are players getting contracts who won't play first team football and probably wouldn't get a contract. They have to fulfill development games. You know,
and by the way,
so
some of the bigger clubs on proper dough as well.
Good dough. Listen, I'm not jealous. You get what you get, but players are being given really good contracts on potential and not fulfilling their potential. Whereas in our day, you know, I can remember playing in the Premier League and it was broken down. You know, I had a contract, I had appearance money, goal bonus. There was like league positions. There was lots of different things. So you had incentives to play. So you'd go on that field. You know, you had to play at a weekend, regardless. And that meant smashing through somebody on a Friday to get their shirt. So the hunger was a little bit different. The game was shaped differently.
I can't remember who it was who told us this. Macca might remember, but it was a former roommate of yours on a previous episode.
It can only be one roommate.
So who would it have been? I can't remember now.
It can only be Des Little. Have you spoken to Des?
Yes, that's who it was. It was Des Little.
It can only be Des Little.
It would be Des Little.
It can only be Des.
It was Des Little, and he said
it was only Des when I roomed at Forest. I shared with Stan once or twice, and never again. And but yeah, Des Little. It was always my roomie.
So it was Des Little who told us this, that you were super clean. And that you have like a little bag of cleaning products whenever you stayed in a hotel. Is that true?
Yeah. 3 letters, OCD. Listen, it's not the worst. It's not the worst condition to have, is it? Cleanliness. I was always, I don't know. I think the way I was brought up in that. I mean, I never went on a plane. I was like Mr. T. I never went out of the country. I was probably 19.
Don't drink the milk, man. Don't drink the milk.
I was like 19 years of age, and I think it was the first holiday I went on with my girlfriend at the time, my wife now. And I was like, why am I getting on a plane? And what's this and what's that? And you know, even takeaway meals growing up, you know, I wasn't about that life. You know, takeaway was, I don't know who's cooking it. I'm not sure about it. So yeah, you know, hygiene, spending time in a hotel and away from home. I was just paranoid about a lot of things. So yeah, I did have this cleaning bag, and it became one of the big stories in football that, you know, I'd get to the hotel. First thing I'd do, I'd clean the sink.
Mate, remember?
The sink, you know? Go on, man.
Remember, I used to pick you up in my daft yellow Suzuki. I remember the looks you used to give me, because it was a right tip. There were tapes everywhere, and I was trying to play you some tunes. You're just looking at me, going, "Oh
dear." That is we was obviously two different sides of the spectrum there. You just being a sloth, an absolute sloth, a young person who just didn't care, and I was the other extreme, but. No, listen, I learned to kind of deal with that over the years. I'm not as bad as I was, but I'm still a hygiene freak to be. And you can imagine during this pandemic when it first started.
Oh man!
I mean, when it first started, the handshaking, it was probably a relief to me that I didn't have to shake people's hands, because I was never keen on shaking hands. You know, it'd be a fist bump or an elbow, even back in the day. So. Yeah, I just found that, you know what, as soon as people started saying that, wash your hands, I was thinking, listen, that'll do me, because I don't have to shake anybody's hands again. Excellent.
And you know, everybody else is cleaner as well.
Yeah, you like to think so, right? You like to hope that people have actually learned from this. But what happens? Do people revert to their nastiness when we come out of it? I'm hoping people still. I'm hoping they continue this and you know, keep adhering to, you know, good health practices.
You've been vindicated now. You know, all these years, people have teased you for being clean, but you've been absolutely vindicated. You were ahead of the curve.
It could have been avoided. See, You know, you got to know these things. Just take care of yourself, look after yourself.
That's it. If everyone had followed your lead, we wouldn't have been in this position.
I don't know about that. I mean, there's conspiracy theories and all sorts. We're not going to get into any of that, are we? So,
no,
who knows?
No. We often reminisce with guests, particularly strikers, about their goals. And the one I really remember of yours, and I don't know if this tallies with your memory of your own goals, but Tottenham at home. And I just remember that being a really thrilling end to the match. It was that season when we just come up, where we were looking to finish high up in the Premier League. Obviously, we ended up finishing third. And I remember that goal so clearly. I was sitting in the main stand, and my memory of it is that the ball is really hard to get under control. It's messy. The keeper's coming out. I think there's a couple of defenders around you or something. You managed to get it in. And in a way, that felt like a typical Jason Lee goal. A lot of your goals were in the 6-yard box where you needed real quality technique, where it's sort of a messy situation and you're able to finish in really difficult circumstances. And for me, that one really, I remember that. And I remember your celebration, just like the arms going everywhere. Like it was such an amazing finish. But am I
making
right?
it sound, yes, in your mind, that's I like the way it sounds. I wish that was the case. But what I remember, if we were to run it back a little bit, if we were to do the analysis of the goal, you know, Ian won with a left foot. But as a winger, very frustrating for me because he wasn't a winger that went past people. He had zero pace and he never got to the byline. So he would just pick passes out and put the ball in for whoever. He must have kicked the ball from like 60 yards from goal or something, or at least the halfway line. He's punted the ball forward, okay? And that was my endeavour in those days, that I would chase things down and I would, be an absolute menace to whoever I was playing against. He's punted the ball forward. And what's happened is Ian Walker's come out and he's absolutely bricked it. You know, it's me or Ian Walker. You know, I can see the white of his eyes.
I know where my money is.
He's chasing out. Exactly. So he's chasing out. I'm chasing in. The defenders have got caught on the hop. Colin Caldwell was playing that day, I remember. So I've got him behind him. And I've managed to head the ball above. I mean, come on. You shouldn't be able to jump over a goalkeeper. But I've jumped over him, headed the ball over him. He's collapsed, or got out of the way as soon as possible. Then the ball's bounced. And that's where I've had the problem because to get onto your own flick on is difficult in itself. So I've headed the ball. It's bounced. And the defenders are now coming in. And you just want the ball to be there so you can just put it in the net. And it was taking forever for the ball to get under control, as you say, and I've managed to probably throw my leg at it and get it into a goal from 3 or 4 yards out. But in my mind, it was absolute carnage and chaos. Like, they all go and challenge. People are coming. I'm waiting for a goal. Come on, just score. And I managed to put the ball in the net. So you made it sound a lot more glamorous than it actually was.
Yeah. Well, I just think a lot of that one was amazing. And I just remember the place going ballistic. I remember the goal against Wimbledon at home, again, like a crowded penalty box, really difficult to get a ball through a jumble of legs. Leicester away. You seem to do really well you were able to score goals in really tricky situations. I don't know if I'm right or whether you're just often
No. I mean, when I arrived and Forest was obviously in the second division, now first division, championship, whatever, I played some games. And then obviously the following season, Stan predominantly played the games. No one else was getting a look in. Yeah, as I said, we played with one striker and we played with 5 midfielders. So that was really frustrating for me. I was like chomping at the bit. I was having to play in the reserves with Macca. It was like doing my head.
Oh no!
It was doing my head in, no. So the point was,
I could beat a man and put a ball in.
No, you could ball. No, and to be fair, we used to play in the reserves, and as I said, I knew there was a good crop of young players. But if I rewind it and tell you what I was saying, I arrived at Forest, and I didn't arrive in my mindset to just not play first team football. I wanted to play, having been playing first team football for the last 3-4 yeers. So that was my mindset. I was really desperate to be in that team. And I was always in the squad. I was always on the bench. And in the first team, I got labelled like a super sub. And that's the last thing you want as any player, as a striker or whatever, is to be labelled a super sub. But, I didn't mope about it. I was like, I'm going to do... So every time I came off the bench, I was impactful, created or scored or whatever, just made it difficult. And I went through probably a week or 2 weeks where I managed to score a few goals, Leicester, Newcastle, which we lost,
away, yeah,
and the Tottenham game. So it was a good, it was a good period for me to actually get on the pitch, score some goals, and then obviously show the manager, remind people that I can actually do more than just sit on the bench week in, week out. So yeah, you know, the goals that came, some of them might have looked a little bit simplistic, but people will never give you credit for scoring a goal. And listen, the hardest thing in football is scoring goals. So when people want to, you know,
sorry, Jake.
Go on. When people want to be disparaging of any player, especially a striker, there's a reason why people play centre forward and they play centre half. I've played centre half before. If you kick the ball out of play, you actually get applauded centre half and head the ball, you know, you kick it into the stands and out of the stadium. Yeah, well done. But as a striker, you've got to hold it up. You've got to be technically proficient. You've got to score goals. You've got to create. It's the hardest position in football. So, you know, for me, you know, the goals that I scored came from learning. And as I said, I wasn't an academy graduate. I learned really quickly being exposed to first team football, taking up good positions on the pitch. And also, I was never a selfish striker. So I would see myself as a number 9. You know, I play invariably with my back to goal. And I would hope that I would have a striker alongside me who would benefit from being alongside somebody like myself. So, yeah, the goals that came, they wasn't by fluke. There was hard work, a lot of work on the training ground.
You see, for me, Jay, you were great in positions that strikers like me would avoid like the plague. So I would avoid positions that you would find yourself in and deliberately put yourself in. So you were so effective like that. And I think that's something that people never picked up on, is that graft and the ability in those areas. They might look clumsy, but there's an art to that and there's a bravery to that. And it's so usable to have a centre forward that's brave enough and willing enough to go into those positions and actually be effective in those positions as well.
Well, I worked with a lot of strikers over the years, you know, position-specific work. And the first thing I always ask the striker is, because you always have a perception in your mind how you want to play the game.
Yeah.
You know, and there was lots of big strikers who would be, as big as myself, same physique. And me and Stan, chalk and cheese in terms of the way we played the game, by the way. Similar physique, same size, but he wouldn't play the game like a number 9. Invariably, he didn't enjoy heading the ball, you know. So there's other strikers, you know, Marlon Harewood, find him under the bus, wouldn't want to head the ball. There's lots of big strikers who invariably think, no, I'm going to play the game in a different way, you know, and they might be really technically really proficient, but I think it's unavoidable when you're somebody who's of that size to not be expected to go and head the ball and flick balls on and put yourself, like Macca said, in harm's way for somebody else to benefit from. So I learned at a very young age. And I remember a coach came to Charlton, Peter Eustace, who was at Sheffield Wednesday back in the day. And he gave me that confidence. And one of the first said to me, because he'd worked with Mark once and the other, is you've got a chance in the game if you actually play your size and play to your strengths. People always work on their weaknesses, this and the other, but play to your strengths. You know what you're about. So the point I was making, when I speak to strikers, work with strikers, they have a perception in their head how they want to play. I can quickly identify, that sounds great, but I think this is where you're going to be, you know, your strengths are going to be. So someone like Macca, we knew Macca was very quick. You'd have to kind of put the ball into space, you know, give him a chance to run onto things, or you can give him the ball in wide areas and let him run with the ball. You're not going to ask him to go and stand against 2 lumps who centre halves who want to kick through him and jump over him. You just have to know people. But some players, they are kind of deluded at times. They have to learn the hard way that it's not about what you want to do as a player. You have to kind of conform to what's expected of you sometimes and go and adopt that and learn from that.
And what about Macca as a musician, Jason? Did you go to any...
Behave yourself.
Well,
I knew he was going to get to that.
We talk about these gigs.
I knew he was going to get to that.
But I'm trying to piece together who was at these gigs.
Better musician than footballer. Let's be perfectly honest. It is what it is.
I'm not sure that's a compliment or not.
Hey, I'll take that.
I went to Rock City back in the day. I mean, I got sucked in, man. I don't know how he, you know, being a good teammate and all that, trying to support him. It was like,
I appreciate it.
I'm doing a gig at Rock City. Bearing in mind, Macca, if you remember when I arrived at Forest, my London mentality, it was all about jungleism for me. Jungle music, drum and bass. It's evolved, hasn't it, over the years? But it took probably 2 years to arrive in Nottingham from London, but I was in Nottingham still like with this jungle mania. And then I got Macca and you got Stuart Pearce. I'm listening to this alternative music, and obviously I'm thinking, I'm not sure about this music, Macca. you know, I'm listening and all that, and I support you, but I'm not sure. So we went to the gig, Rock City. I remember, I think Scott Gemmell picked me up, and we've gone there, and I'm in this room, and it's carnage. I'm sticking to the floor, and my feet are sticking to the carpet. The people are jumping all over the place, and I'm thinking, what is this? And in those days, and you know, we all had our own kind of looks, and I had the dreadlocks in those days, and you know, I was thinking, well, man, with dreadlocks don't kind of fit into this scenario, but here I am. You know, I was trying to shake my head about, listening to Macca came on, a few teens screamed, and I thought, okay, this is what it's all about. And,
that's why he's up there.
Yeah, and off he went. So no, I do remember, and no, fair play to you. Anybody who's got a passion outside of football needs to have a passion outside of football. You know, I know Liam McKenzie really well, who always wanted to box, and Curtis Woodhouse, and there's been other players and other people. And I think it's important also to have a passion other than football. Too many footballers focus cleanly on just playing the game, and they don't have anything to take their, you know, concentration away from it. And that's not beneficial, you know, mental health and this and the other. You need to have outside interests. So,
I was looking, Jay. I think particularly the position you're in now, in terms of work, there are people that are football people, and I look at lads now, players, and just think, God, he's a football person. If he comes out of the game now, like he's not prepared for anything, he's not set up for anything, or if he can't. And I know players that just like that flounder coming away from the game just because that's all they know, that's all they've got. And I was lucky because you follow your passion, right? The fact that I had a couple of passions was genuinely, I feel lucky to have had that. I feel as accomplished doing music as I do playing football and all that kind of stuff. It fulfilled me in the same way. But if you've got a passion and you've got to reinvent yourself, that can take 5, 6, 10 years for players, can't it? And it can really mess players up.
Yeah, listen, obviously I work with the PFA, and the job is to support current and former players, and invariably my phone will ring on a daily basis. And it's where players struggle to transition. You know, if someone was to say to me when I first started, you would get 21 years out of the game, I mean, of course, I would snap their hands off. And I had 21 years. But when I'm speaking to players, they say on average it's an 8-year playing career for a young player to come in. Players leave the game at whatever age, and they're not prepared. So that's really frustrating when you hear that they're not thinking about transitioning away from the game, thinking about what they can do to kind of counteract. You shouldn't just fall off a cliff, you know, emotionally. The football stopped. You know, what am I going to do next? For me, I had children at a very young age, so I never played golf. You know, I used to socialise this, that, and the other, but invariably I went home and spent time with my children. And whenever I returned home, like the kids were straight on me. The missus was never that really involved in football. It was a reality check always. Don't get above yourself. Now look after the kids. Now help. Do you know what I mean? Get your head around it that way. Yeah, real life. Whereas, you know, some players they don't understand all that, and they're very self-driven. You know, very selfish. And then they don't, you know, they can't cope with what they have to deal with in terms of looking after themselves, which they need to pick up those life skills. When you think players go in from the age of 16 and they come into this bubble and everything's pretty much handed on a plate, you know, we'll take care of you, we'll look after you, you know, we'll tell you where to be, what to do. So you stop even thinking for yourself. So my advice is always very, very to the point. I use case studies. I show players situations of really high profile players that have not coped with coming away from the game and have not prepared themselves for what comes next. So if it can happen to them, it can happen to you. We can only be honest. You know, Macca, you've mentioned it yourself. It's good that we've been through the game. We can kind of relate. We can give people our experiences. Whether they take it on board is up to them. But there's no excuse now, I believe, for a young player. He shouldn't leave the game saying there was nothing in place. I didn't know who to speak to. There's more in place now than ever before.
So
do you think, sorry, Matt, very quickly. Do you think, Jay, that, because this intrigues me, do you think, to some degree, do you know, to get to the top of the game, that the mentality of someone like Ronaldo and everybody wants to be like Ronaldo and Messi, do you think that mentality has to be so single-minded that, and I know you're going to say no to this because of your position, of course, but do you think there's something in the fact that players are thinking, well, I don't want anything in the way of my mind. I don't want anything. I don't want to be coming home and studying. I want to be full on football brain all the time. I want to be in that mentality permanently. I don't want anything to take away from the game. Do you think that the game's changed enough now? The players' mentality has changed enough now that they are starting to back themselves a little bit more and looking at other ventures and building something on the side?
Well, we call it a dual career, and it took me. I got to the age of 30 before I started to really look at education, and that was because I had a serious injury. It shouldn't take that. It shouldn't have taken a serious injury, career-threatening injury, for me to say, you know what, I'm going to go back to college. I'm going to go to university. I'm going to start applying myself and start building.
Why did it take so long?
Because, like a lot of footballers, I was earning a good wage. I was comfortable. I didn't really see. I was 30 years of age. I thought, well, I'll play for another 5 years at least. Yeah. It's that golden age. I hope you're going to get to 35 years of age. But as I said, I got the career-threatening injury, ruptured patella tendon, and I'll never forget the surgeon telling me. I was in London hospital, played at Loftus Road that day, and he said to me, "I hope you got good insurance." And I was like, "That's not really good bedside manner, is it? What do you mean?" He said, seriously, that's the way he spoke to me. I couldn't believe it. I was fuming. And he said,
disrespectful.
Yeah, you struggled to play again. You realise that? I mean, my knee was split in half, so it was terrible. Ronaldo, the Brazilian Ronaldo, had the same injury twice, ruptured patella tendon. And I thought, wow, that's one way of me to start thinking about what I'm going to do next. And it did refocus me. But as I said, I hope young players don't have to go through that before they realise. And going back to what you were saying, Macca, in terms of the Ronaldos and Messi, these players are very few and far between. Yeah. These are unbelievable, the best players that have ever played the game. Everybody else has to work at it. And when people say the Ronaldo and Messi argument, I always go for Ronaldo. Reason being, I love Messi, but Ronaldo's work ethic. His work ethic, he built that frame, that body. Yeah. He will play till he's 40, like Zlatan will. I played till I was 41. There's a reason why you're able to play for as long as you play. I had that injury, but I still played for another 11 years. I played in league till I was 38. I overcame that injury. But being a professional for me was being a consummate professional. I was teetotal. These are little sacrifices, little things. If you're serious about it, then let's get serious about it. Live the life. Diet properly. The late nights, this, that, and the other, the alcohol. These are the sacrifices you have to make. But then there are other players who will try and cut corners and do all those things and still expect to be the best player. Come on, I wasn't the best player, but there's a reason why I outlasted some really, really technical players, because they didn't live the life.
It's really good to hear you talk about that level of sacrifice, Jason, because I'm not able to drink at the moment because I've been diagnosed with gout, and not being able to drink alcohol has come as like quite a big deal for me. But you obviously went years without it, and I presume, now can enjoy a beer.
Yeah. I drink now. When I finished, I kind of tried to retrace my youth, to be honest, and I went through a spurge where, I mean, I'm still fit. I still train. I'm going to go for a run later on today when I get a break in the day. I'll drink, but I'm not crazy about drink. At the end of the day, it's a socialising thing, if anything. But yeah, I just realised when I was playing, I could make that sacrifice, honestly. I hated the idea of, and I used to see it, especially at Forest. There was a drinking culture at Forest.
Massive, yeah.
There was still that hangover. There was still that hangover of players rolling in on a Monday and being terrible, Monday, Tuesday. And then before you know it, they're kind of regaining their senses before, by the back end of the week. But for me, no, Monday, I'm ready to work. I'm ready to work hard. I just didn't understand it. But that was football in those days. There was a real drinking culture. And I can't imagine that would have gave you a long-term. I don't think players played long-term, with a drinking culture behind them. I just don't think your body can recover and recuperate.
Earlier in the show, you said that you'd roomed with Stan a couple of times, but never again. What was he like as a roommate?
Wow. Stan the man. I mean, from what I remember, I don't know, he was very restless. He wouldn't keep still. Listen, it's well documented. Stan has been fighting his own demons for many, many years, but we wasn't to know that. As young people, you just don't relate. I had no correlation or understanding of young people going through whatever I just thought at the end of the day, we're in a privileged position. Life's great. That's how you feel. I've learned over the years that there's a lot more to it, mental health and just having a better understanding, especially this industry that we're in. But Stan was unpredictable. Let's be perfectly honest. He was unpredictable. Sometimes he was missing from training and this, that, and the other. And Stan was going through what he was going through, but I didn't have an understanding of that. Or more to the point, I didn't identify with that. Same age, coming from where I came from. For me, football and anything wanted to throw at me outside of football wasn't really going to make a dent. But I certainly understand that you can't treat people by your own standards. You have to have a little bit of understanding that people do, they respond to things in a different way.
It's such a good point you make about age, because it's only been fairly recently where you meet members of the current squad. And as a kid, obviously, footballers to me were like giants and they were gods. They were fully grown men. And now you meet footballers, you're like, oh my God, they're really young. They're fresh out of school. It's so weird that as a society, the moment you put on a football kit and you go onto a pitch, you get treated as if basically you have no problems, you're not allowed to have problems, and you are a fully responsible, fully formed adult. And that's just not the way it is. It must be mad every guest we have on the show, I think it's mad. But for you two, you were playing for Forest at such a young age. You're playing in the Premier League and in Europe at such a young age. That must just be bonkers for you to go through that in your 20s.
Listen, I think you enjoy it. You enjoy the ride. I think it helped, as I said, that I was relatively experienced when I arrived at Forest. That was a difference. I was able to handle, dealing with adversity and this, and I had to, that. If we talk about Badil and Skinner and this and the other, I had to have, be able to deal with ups and downs. I think to survive in the game, they talk about resilience. There's lots of players, lots of athletes, lots of people that suffer with anxiety. It's overcoming those, being able to get through that. You've got people at clubs who are there to support people. There wasn't in our day. You just had to it's fight or flight. But I just think we was prepared for it. It was a good club as well. Before I came in, I know about Brian Clough and I knew the stories. And I think he always kept players, kept their feet on the ground. And I think players, they had long careers because of that. It's a little bit like Alex Ferguson did with, Beckham and all the rest gigs and that at Man United. I think these father figures, these old school managers had a way of ensuring that young players coped in the right way.
There's a nurture element,
maybe
isn't
a lot
there?
of young players. Yeah, I think a lot of young players might struggle now to have that father figure, and also they might not respond to it in the same way.
I didn't want to ask about Badil and Skinner because it just must have. I can't imagine what it was like for you to go through that, because it was such a big show and it was so ubiquitous, and people must still ask you about it today. And I just imagined you've been sick of talking about it, so I didn't want to really touch on it. But
well, no, listen, I mentioned it first, so there you go. There was a poem in the week. I was contacted by somebody, and national poem. He won the award, and he mentions me, references me and my situation, going what I went through in those times. And he talks about his own experiences off the back of that. So when you listen to people and how it affected so many people, and especially where we are now and what I do around equality and dealing with discrimination, I can't get away from that subject. At the end of the day, I handled it the best way I could. I was 23 years of age at the time. I was playing football. I just wanted to be judged on playing football, not my appearance. And it was never going to define me. And it wasn't something that I felt that was going to ruin me. But I think other people always perceived that, it kind of ruined. Well, it didn't ruin me. I was out of the team because of lack of form. And nobody knew how to kind of deal with that situation in those days. I've always had a sense of humour. I used to watch it with my roommate Desley on a Friday evening. So imagine it. There was only probably 5 channels or this and the other back in the day. Sky was just coming in. You would watch those channels. So Friday evening, I would watch that, and then Saturday I would have to go out and play. Do you see what I'm saying? So you have to deal with that. At the end of the day, people are laughing. It's a joke. Blah blah blah. My mentality was always, let me kind of shut them up. Let me just score a goal. Let me do what I can. I will still be around in 10 years' time. That was always my mentality, But it was difficult for family and friends and for other people that was being discriminated against for whatever it may be. So I've learned over the years to talk about the subject, to kind of raise, highlight around mental health and the fact that not everybody's got those same coping mechanisms. And I fully understand that, the way I dealt with it, I shouldn't assume that somebody else could cope with it in the same way.
How did it feel with the lads, Jay? Because I can remember, I thought about this quite a lot about a year ago, actually, because somebody said to me, this is mental. I mean, this shows half the problem. But someone said to me about a year ago about the blacking up. And I went, yeah, he blacked up. I'd completely forgotten. And I was like, oh my, it's not just like the mocking of, I was like, oh my God, that's horrendous.
Yeah.
And then
different era.
Oh, I'm mental.
Different
and then
era.
I remember I remember it first happening. We were away somewhere. And I can remember, my question to you is really, how did it feel with the lads in the room? Because in the dressing room, because I can remember being away and I remember it coming on and them doing what they did. And then all the doors flying open in the corridor and everyone piling into the corridor laughing. And you didn't come out the room. I remember you not coming out the room. Yeah, I remember that quite vividly. And,
I'd like to think I was okay because I don't remember during that period. I don't ever remember thinking, oh, I'm struggling here and I can't cope with it. I thought I was dealing with it okay. I thought I had a sense of humour. The only way to come through it was to obviously kind of ride the storm. But yeah, you talk about blacking up. That couldn't happen now. A lot of people was upset for me, and that's what you have to deal with. So before then and after, there's always going to be something, colour my skin. There was always a reason why fans will always get on your back. So you don't want to give them, the upmanship. You don't want to give in and show them that you're struggling to deal with it. So for me, it was always, I will fight that. But for family and friends, it was always difficult. If they came to a game, whether it be the hairstyle or the colour of your skin, the amount of racial abuse I've received throughout my career, you're going to have family members who are going to want to jump to your defence. And you think, you don't want to be playing the game thinking about how other people are coping with it. That's the worst feeling in the world, thinking, well, I don't want you to come to this game today. I used to have those conversations, to my wife or whoever, don't come to this game today, just leave it alone. Maybe come to home games, don't go to away games. You shouldn't be having those conversations, right? No. But those are the things that you have to do. You have to protect yourself, you want to protect others. So yeah, it's just kind of getting around that and dealing with the fog. But I don't remember going through a time where I thought I'm going to quit. I was never going to quit. It's playing football for me was the easiest thing in the world. I was dedicated. I lived the life. I played a game. I knew I could make a living out of the game. So why would I give in just because somebody says you're not good enough? We have to deal with that from a very young age, where people say, "I'm better than you. I can do that." Well, actually, you can't, and you've tried. It is what it is. So you just have to kind of deal with it.
I think the real shame is that football, for me and for a lot of lads, you grow up in a council estate, you have issues growing up, whatever it might be. You might be fine, but for me, football was an escape. It was somewhere where I could be free from everything for 90 minutes and go and express myself, and nothing mattered. I could be the best of the best on that park, or I could go and have a fight on that park, or whatever it was. It was what it was. But I guess when that happens, when it's getting taken out onto the pitch, you lose that freedom. When the crowd, you can hear things from the crowd and all that kind of stuff. I can imagine football not being a freedom, being you getting abuse on the pitch, for things out of your control, not for you playing, not for you playing, for how you look, or for whatever stupid reason.
I get where you're coming from, but I always thought that the safest place is on the pitch. I always felt worse if I was sub, because you're kind of closer to everybody. You got to hear more. Yeah. Just starting a game, being on the pitch is the best place you can be, and also being on the pitch gives you a chance to do something about it. I remember scoring a goal at Stamford Bridge, and that's Badil's team, and I scored the equaliser. Anybody but me could score that day, but I scored the goal, and I remember running like half the length of the pitch to celebrate with the Forest fans, and that's what I'm talking about. That's a great feeling. I remember scoring at Ellen Road. I'd been out of the team that season. I was top goal scorer, for Forest, and I'd been out of the team for a period of time. I got back in the team. Porter Cabins, Ellen Road. Yeah, they was all waiting. They was coming in. They was giving us abuse when we got off the coach, got onto the pitch. That. They went 1-0 up. I scored a goal 1-1. I remember pulling my hair up. You know, you could have heard a pin drop. That's what you live for as a player, right? As a person, you think, give me the opportunity to shut these people up. That's what you live for. So I never ever thought, you know what, this is it. This is the end of me. I can't cope. You know, I'm going to feel sorry for myself. I loved playing the game.
You're not that guy, are you?
No, the reason I played the game for so long, and I even had a spell in non-league, was because I was, you know, I had the ambition. I still wanted to play and compete. So it's a great game.
So many other, I mean, you one of the few players to have played for Forest County and Mansfield, as well as loads of other teams as well. And you obviously do fantastic work for the PFA now. One of the things you're really good at is the match day hosting in the corporate areas at Forest. Now, not everyone will get the chance to see you do that. I've seen you, I think the last time I saw you there, you were interviewing Joe Lolly after the game. And it just struck me, what an amazing pundit you would make. Is that something that you've ever thought of going into?
I've had opportunities and I've done work if and when I've been given the opportunity, but I played for so long. So luckily enough, I was always working, you know, Tuesdays and Saturdays. I was asked to go on Soccer AM for years and years. And I was like, I can't, I'm always working. So it took me till I retired before I went on Soccer AM. Do you see what I'm saying? So to get an opportunity to be a pundit, you basically have to be retired or injured. I was never retired or injured. So, you know, but I've always enjoyed it. I did a media degree. I do a lot of media stuff now. And, yeah, listen, you enjoy talking. And it's football at the end of the day. It should come naturally. But speaking to players, I think players speaking to players should have a natural bond. And you kind of break through that. There's a little bit of paranoia sometimes when you're a player. Like, what's he going to ask me? Who is he? I don't trust him. Do you know what I mean? You know, you're going to get stitched up. So invariably, if it's a player on player, you kind of break through that straight away and you usually get a good interview. So no, I enjoy doing this stuff.
Well, you're so good at it. And you're right. I mean, it's why part of the reason, apart from the fact that he's a very good interviewer, is why Macca's here, is that it makes it easier to have, rather than just me being a fan, it's so important to have a player there who can talk your language, who actually understands it. Because whatever fans think, we don't really understand what goes on. And you can read all the books in the world you like. You can watch every game going. None of us will ever know what really goes on behind the scenes, what your mentality is like, what the job of a footballer actually is. It's in a way, it's a world that we only see such a small part of. And that's why it baffles me that so many fans are so opinionated, because I think I'm a fan and I know that experts. I know absolute
fans are all experts.
I know that I know nothing.
Fans are all experts. Fans are all experts. And also, I'm glad you mentioned it, because I wouldn't have come on if it was just you. You're lucky Macca was here to help me get me on the show. But no, you're right. Fans, and that's the good thing about football. Wherever I go, whatever I do, the missus will then invariably end up walking away. She's like, someone's talking football. It's football. We all think we know what's best, don't we? And we all support a team, and he's not very good and he's rubbish and he's great. And you just think, okay, it's a great topic. And as I said earlier, I think you have to respect anybody that makes a living out of the game, who's professional. The first thing I do when I meet scholars at 16 is I congratulate them, because to get a scholarship, you're basically a pro. You know, 16 to 18, you've got your 2-year scholarship. You've come further than, you know, so many of your friends. You've had to make sacrifices already to get there. And that's just the start of the journey. To stay in the game, to be a professional, it's not as easy as people think. You know, you have to be able to perform at a high level, and you're in the small percent of people that can actually do that. So, no,
that's it. I just think it's anyone who even plays at semi-pro level. I'm just like amazed by it. And to ever play professional football, to play professional football in the Premier League like you guys did. I mean, for me, and Paul always thinks I'm taking the mick, it's like meeting Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. Like, you're in such a... You guys, in football terms, basically made it to the moon. It's like, you did it. You did what so many young lads and girls dream of, and you did it. It's just amazing.
Yeah, as I said, you have to give people credit. Anybody that's had a career, whether it be 2 years, 3 years, whatever it may be, there's no given that you're going to come into the game and have 20 years in the game. And that's going back to what we were saying earlier when I speak to young players, just to try and keep their feet on the ground. You may not get 25 years or 20 years in the game, 15 years. You may well not play till you're 35. So you're going to have to give it your best shot, right? And you're going to have to make as much money as possible. And you don't want to leave the game thinking, I wish I did more. That's got to be one of. I think that's what people struggle with. If you've got regrets, I've got no regrets. I maximised my potential. I believe you can't leave the game thinking, "Oh, I wish I did more." You know, that must be a tough feeling.
And when you look back specifically on your time at Forest, how do you feel about those Forest years in your career?
Enjoyed it, loved it, and that's one of the reasons I've always tried to give back to the club. You know, I went back, I coached in the academy, I worked in the community, I sit on the community trust board, I do ambassadorial stuff for the club. I'll always support the club in the best way I can because, you know, you never know where you're going to settle. I lived in Nottingham for 25 years. You know, my children grew up there. It's a good city, and I think you never know where you're going to end up. You know, being a London boy, I always thought I'd move back to London, but I had no wish to move back to London once I left London. So a good city, good club, always tried to do things the right way. They've got a good academy. They've always had a good academy. And it's good to see, you know, people like Joe Wall who I coached, you know, Tyler Walker, Yatesy, some of the boys I worked with. You get a good feeling when you see them playing first team football. And for a club like Forest, you need to have that conveyor belt of homegrown talent going into the team because that's where you get the right attitudes and you know, for other players coming in, they can actually identify with what it actually means to play for that club.
And they feed off it, don't they?
Yeah, of course they feed off that. I mean, you know, Ryan Yates, I mean, you've heard Joe Wall speak many times with, you know, his passion. Great kid, great lad. He's endeavour. He works extremely hard. You know, he gets what he deserves. You know, he went out on loan. He didn't want to go out on loan. He went to Rangers, but that was great for him. He went and played, you know, good football at a good level. Came back and he's back in the team playing. But every manager's got their ideas about who they want to play, and sometimes it's difficult when you're a homegrown player as well. You'd have had this, Macca, that you see players from other clubs come in and get treated better because managers always will look after the players that they sign. They can't help but do that. Otherwise, why would you bring a player in if you don't back him? But it's hard for homegrown players in that respect that sometimes fans might not appreciate them as much. Contractually, they might not get the best contract because they're homegrown. And that can be difficult. So to stay at a club, you know, to do 10 years or whatever for your homegrown club, like Chrissy Cohen was brilliant for Forest. That's not easy, you know, if you can do that. But it's always beneficial to, as I said, when you bring players from Weather, because they can always identify with that homegrown player.
I thought that, like with, you know, Ron Atkinson and Dave Bassett a little bit when they came in. Just like, we're all these years coming through from the age of 9, 10, worth nothing to this club. You know, was all that worth nothing? You just bought him in, and I'm now, I got injured, and what? I'm over there now, right? I'm now in the reserve dressing room. What? Cheers, brilliant.
Yeah, I remember that. And Billy Davis, I was coaching at the time, Billy Davis, and he had no vision for the youth.
Yeah,
you know, as successful as he was, and I know the fans hold him in high esteem. You got a great academy just over there. But you don't see, and some managers have to have that selfish streak. They haven't got the time and patience to wait for a young player to come through the system and play in their first team. So they will focus on bringing in the right players.
And it depends on the time, doesn't it? It depends where you are in the league and what you need to do on the job.
It's not good for the homegrown players who, as you said, have been there maybe 10 years, come through all the age groups and have worked hard. And you that's what you're sold a dream. You know, you come into an academy, there has to be a conveyor belt and an opportunity for you. Because some players won't sign for certain clubs knowing that there's no chance of playing in the first team. So you have to think about it like that, you know? I had to leave London to go and play wherever. But if I came through an academy, I would have been feeling just like you if I couldn't get into the first team. Charlton was a good club because Charlton was, you know, one of the smaller London clubs that had to rely on young players. You had to give them an opportunity to get into the first team. So I can't think of anything worse than being at one of these bigger clubs, knowing that you're never going to play in the first team.
Jason, this has been an absolute treat. Thank you so much for coming on. You're one
We've
of the
gone into extra time.
We have gone into extra time. I was trying to wind it up for 1 o'clock, so I know you had a meeting.
You've done well. I'm going to send my apologies when I go into this next meeting, but this has been a lot lighter-hearted than what I'm going into.
Okay. We really appreciate
it. I appreciate it. Macca, thank you.
Awesome to see you again, mate.
Appreciate it. Have a good day,
all the best, pal.
Cheers, Jason. Thanks, mate.
Top man, Jay.
Well, Jason Lee, Matt, he had another meeting afterwards. So we booked him in for an hour. We recorded this at noon. He had a meeting at 1. And as the clock was ticking down, I was like, oh, man, we could easily do. If he didn't have another meeting, I'd have just let that carry on running.
You should have told me because I was gibbering on. I had no idea.
Well, I hate being late. I hate when people are late for me, and I hate being the reason for other people's lateness. I didn't want to overrun. But it was at that point you're like, we could easily do another hour with Jason Lee. Because
Shall we officially apologise now to whomever it was that whose time we've trespassed on?
Yes, if you had a meeting at 1 o'clock with Jason Lee a few weeks ago,
we do apologise.
We do apologise for making him late. This is like a letter from his mum, isn't it? Like, it's our fault.
It wasn't his fault that Jason was late.
We just think, oh man, there's so many other things I wanted to talk to him about, and he's such a good talker, and he's a really deep thinker. And you just think, oh, there's so much more. Now we've had guests come back. Robbo came back, Reedy came back for like Christmas specials, so it'd be great to get him back.
Really would, yeah.
He's such a great thinker.
Do you know what I mean? We've got such a depth of players to go at still. Some of the bigger ones as well that would be fantastic, but we've still not. We've only a couple of times returned to a few players, and like I think there'd be an appetite for fans of the show.
Well, you know what? I don't want to float ideas that we don't then deliver on. But I was thinking about this. Like when you have someone on, it's roughly an hour, and we talk about their entire career, usually their Forest element, for an hour. That's a really broad subject for just 1 hour. So I think people will tell the stories that, you know, obviously we might ask in specific areas, and that triggers memories. But what I was thinking about would be a really good thing to do would be to do, I guess other shows would call this a deep dive, but you do an episode on a specific thing. So we do an episode on the 1992 ZDS Cup final on its anniversary. Now, it was the anniversary the other week of us winning it, and we're the last holders of the full members trophy. So we are the reigning champions. But get on, say, Scott Gemmell and Kingsley Black, just to talk about that final. Because I think, you know, when you give someone a really specific area...
Scotty's volley?
Yeah, he scores 2 great goals in that final. Kingsley Black, all the goals are great. All the Forest goals are great. Psycho gets injured in it, which then rules him out pretty much for most of the 92-93 season. So there's a legacy to that game. But just to get maybe 1 or 2 guests on and only talk about that one thing. Now, obviously, things would branch off that, but we could do an episode on the 1990 League Cup final.
I like it. I do feel that this is a conversation we should have had privately, though.
Yes, I realise I'm springing this on you. And I realise that for you, dear listener, you may go, oh, this is great, do that. And then we never get round to it. You go, you dear old Wallid. But I was just thinking of ways of theming things, maybe, and doing them around anniversaries. We don't necessarily have to do them around anniversaries, but do them around particular bits and pieces.
It's a nice idea.
It's an idea. So it may remain an idea. But I think, you know what? Sod it. Let's just do that. Let's, for the next one, do... Oh, no. What if we can't? Maybe. We do.
Have we got someone lined up? Who we got next? Oh, don't tell. No, don't.
Well, that's it.
Have we got someone?
Let's talk about this. We should both be doing this off air, off mic.
We're too comfortable and we're too relaxed. We shouldn't be doing this at home.
We're sat on a settee
and relaxed. It feels like we're together.
Well, we shall leave you now, listener. Thank you for downloading this. We hope you've enjoyed it. Jason's been a superb guest. We would love to get him on again in the future.
Proper legend.
All you need to do is give us a follow on social media, on Twitter at RRD1865, and put this on your Facebook, your Twitter, your social media. Say, wow, what a great show. Or put it in your own words.
Wow.
And leave us a review wherever you listen to this, on whatever platform. Some allow you to do it, some don't. I know Acast, you can leave a star rating. And on Apple Podcasts, you can leave a rating and review. Please just take us a couple of seconds to do that, as consider that payment service rendered to the podcast community. And we'll see you next time. Yes.